To continue the conversation, let's bring in Colin Robertson, a former Canadian diplomat who is currently a fellow with the Canadian Global Affairs Institute. Colin, good to see you.
Good to be with you, Andrew.
So we have Minister Dominic LeBlanc saying that he's more optimistic than when he arrived in Washington. We have the president suggesting that Canada would walk away very happy today. Should Canadians feel happy?
Well, it could have ended much worse. Just remember President Zelensky in the Oval Office, or the President of South Africa. I think it went as well as we could have hoped, and I don't think there was much expectation that we were going to come out of this with any kind of a deal. What we did get was the President's full attention on the issue for over an hour, and he said very positive things about the Canada-U.S. relationship and about Prime Minister Carney, and so that should act as help our negotiators, Dominic LeBlanc and Ambassador Kirsten Hillman, in their continuing negotiations, which, as Dominic LeBlanc said, will continue likely tomorrow.
Yeah, and we heard the president speak of natural conflict in the negotiations when it comes to the auto sector with the steel sector. He says the two countries are competing for the same business. What does that suggest to you when it comes to how that tariff discussion is now going to unfold?
It suggests to me that we're likely to wind up with not a freer trade agreement, but a managed trade agreement, similar to what we already have with lumber and with the auto industry, but we may see this go into other industries, perhaps steel and aluminum as well, if we're able to reach an agreement.
And I also thought it was illuminating when we heard the president talk about the difficulty of reaching a deal with Canada compared to the European Union, for instance. You know, ultimately, what do you think is holding up an agreement? Is it the simple fact that our two countries are so interconnected?
Yes, Andrew, I think that's it. It's the most complex, as both the president and the prime minister articulated, relationship in the world. And the auto industry is probably the prime example of that. It's been deeply integrated for over 60 years, as the prime minister said, as long as he's been alive. And trying to separate that, the car companies don't want it, the labor unions don't want it, the parts manufacturers don't want it, but the president and his team are insistent on it, and it is happening. And the result, of course, is more unemployment in Canada, disruption in the industry, and higher prices for consumers.
Okay, and we also heard the president again talk about supply management, about market access for American farmers as an irritant, but we've also heard Canadian leaders continue to say that supply management is not on the table going forward. Do you think that system is at risk in order to get a deal for these other sectors like steel, like autos, like lumber?
Yeah, no, Andrew, I do not think it will be at risk. I think what we'll do is we'll offer the Americans perhaps more quota, but keep our supply management system. The Americans have supply management system for things like rice and sugar, and I think tobacco. So we can do the same. The agriculture industry in both countries is heavily supported by governments. This is common around the world. Even though they're extraordinarily successful, we are an agri-food power, as is the United States. So I don't think that will be an issue at the end of the day. I think we'll be able to keep supply management. We may give the Americans a bit more quota, which they're not using currently, but we will sustain the system that we have because all parties in Canada are absolutely committed to it, and it would be too big a political risk. And I think the Americans understand that.
Okay, let's finish on this then, because as a former diplomat, you were involved in free trade negotiations with the United States. I want to ask what you're going to be watching for next in these talks, and really as we keep inching toward this fuller review of the CUSMA agreement next year.
I think the negotiations are going to continue for some time because it is so complex, but I'm going to be watching to ensure that they do continue, be watching to see whether Ambassador Hillman stays on. She's our chief negotiator, but she's been there a long time. Whether Dominic LeBlanc remains in place. I think this could go on for months. And as you say, it is bound up with the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement. But the Americans have already indicated that they would prefer to do bilateral deals with Canada and Mexico. That would disrupt the productive capacity we've already arrived at, this North American platform. But that may be where we wind up. And in many ways, the negotiations, when we do sit down on continentally, are really what we used to call dueling bilaterals. That is Canada-U.S., U.S.-Mexico, Canada-Mexico, and Mexico-U.S.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Colin Robertson, thanks as always for your insight on the Canada-U.S. relationship.
My pleasure, Andrew.